This is Paul Johnson. This week on The Optimistic American, we're going to interview Tom Fishman, who has built a program called the Builders Program. Now, what's interesting about this, we all just went through an election where we talked a lot about the divisions that we have in our country. Certainly, there are people on both sides who feel lots of anxiety about that division. My guess is those people who are on the Trump side are feeling pretty victorious, but those people who are on the Harris side are feeling a lot of anxiety. The real issue in politics for us to be successful is that regardless of who wins, to find a way to build something better moving forward in the future. And that really only happens with bipartisan support on both sides. The program that we're going to talk about, the Builders Program, does a ranking of those elected officials who are the best at extending their hand out to the other side. I think you'll find as you watch this that they're pretty fair about that with both Democrats and Republicans. They have a great group of consultants that are helping them that have been consultants at the highest level of politics. And I also think that they're starting with a good intent, which is to try and help build a sustainable path forward. Now, I'm just an ordinary optimistic American who still believes that the United States is a great cause for good. If you believe in what it is that we're doing, go ahead and push that subscribe button and let's get this show going. Well, Tom Fishman, welcome to the Optimistic American. We're happy to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Great to see you.
All right. You have built an amazing tool, and for that matter, an amazing enterprise that is called Builders. And the focus of Builders is you do a number of things, but I'm really interested a lot in this whole idea of trying to get Congress to work together. We can talk about the overall aspects of what you're trying to do, but start with this. Do you think that the public is, after watching what happened in the last election, we certainly had Donald Trump who won, but more than one. The Republicans swept the Senate, they swept the House. Well, they haven't swept the House yet, but they're pretty close. They're in a position where they don't really need to work with the other side if they don't want to. From a public standpoint, do you think that the public has an interest in them working together?
I mean, listen, there's no doubt that we are in a post-election period going to be in an acute phase of one emotional experience. And we see that kind of affective divide out in the world right now. There's half the country, many, tens of millions of people are elated and relieved and joyous about the result. And many millions are scared or feeling despair and expressing, maybe fear. So there's you can't get around the fact that the immediate impact of the crescendo of the kind of noise leading up into the campaign is likely leading people to be reflective in a different way. That said, the nature of the need and the work to come together across lines of difference and build does not go away. And the last many years, this field of depolarization has been doing this work. The 3 years since Builders have launched, the polls that we've run and polls that other organizations have run show over and over and over again that a great majority of Americans want to build upon common ground, find solutions to our shared problems. Do we have different ideas on how to get there? Absolutely. Are we feeling that acutely right now? Probably. But the broader and more deeply rooted desire to solve problems together and for our elected officials to work together to solve problems still persists.
Yeah, to me, the fascinating thing about this is Trump's election in terms of electoral college. It's larger for any Republican person who's taken office since George Bush. If you took all offices, it'd be about the same as Barack Obama. But regardless, there was a big sweep in terms of if you look at this from electoral college standpoint. If you actually look at the popular vote or the vote within each of the states, it was much closer. But what to me is more important is that these are the folks who represent all of the public, even if they've only been elected by one side. And the public that they represent, I think you put it well. There's one group that is elated. There's another group that is terrified. Now, I don't buy into being terrified. I definitely was not on Trump's side during this election, but I don't buy into being terrified. I think we need agency and to recognize that, not only do all people have upsides and downsides, but all programs have upsides and downsides. Trying to understand the upsides and downsides of those programs becomes important in the overall discourse. That doesn't matter. I'm talking to many people on the Democratic side who are terrified. That's not good for democracy long term. And that's not good for how we work with one another. If our elected officials find a way to work together, there's no doubt in my mind the public will do a better job of working together. At the same time, if our leaders are divided, we'll be more divided. I happen to buy into the concept that leadership makes a difference. It makes a difference in our companies, it makes a difference in our governments, it makes a difference in our families. Leadership matters. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I totally agree. I think that the modeling of our elected leaders is crucially important. It sets a tone, and yet at the same time, I do feel like you touched on a key word and one of my favorite words, which is agency, right? To my liberal and democratic friends who may be on some spectrum of unhappy with the result to fearful and despairing, action absorbs anxiety. And I think this is a connection point that we've lost. I think in the media ecosystem that we're in, constantly bombarded, it just feels like this is like democracy is a thing that happens to us and not a thing that we build every day and build anew, each day in the way in which we choose to take action. It's a lot of the work that we do at Builders is to try to equip people to take those actions, whether it's narrative shift through social media channels and other kinds of traditional media channels, all the way to the Builders Power Rankings, the tool that we lost to evaluate our congressional representatives on whether or not they're operating in good faith in a way that's solution oriented and in a way that models a constructive kind of conflict. We're not looking for kumbaya. We know not everyone's going to disagree. The problems that we have and the divides that we have are real. Some polarization is healthy around those divides. When it becomes us versus them, good versus evil, I'm on the correct moral side and you're on the incorrect side, and to cooperate with you at all is somehow a betrayal of my entire tribe, we've gotten to a point where, at minimum, problem solving becomes unlikely, if at all possible. And at worst, we're going to be inclined to take extreme actions and potentially be violent. So that is the opposite of what I was talking about before. That's not what people want, and that also bears out in sort of qualitative and quantitative data. So people need to take action. Our elected leaders are also people we, for all intents and purposes, we hire, right? These are people that work on behalf of us, and we need to enforce the incentives that the election in 2 years will allow us to do, and the 2 years after that will allow us to do. So the question is just, what are those incentives? And if we're high-fiving people for dunking on each other and clapping back on social media, that's what they're going to keep doing. And if we get out there and vote out people who may share our policy positions, but conduct themselves in such a way that there's virtually no chance at all of those policy positions being implemented in any durable way, they got to get the boot. And I think that that's what we're trying to equip people to do in their personal lives and living rooms, all the way to their communities, all the way to the representatives of our states and our country.
All right, tell me about the Builders program and the power rankings, how that works, and how you think it can have an effect on Congress.
Yeah, so we borrowed the language. Your listeners may be familiar, right, with the power rankings from sports. Like, you see a power rankings in football every week. You get a list of who are the best teams based on their record and injuries and all manner of like the actual performance of the team. And the thing that we love about power rankings is that they are both defensible and debatable, right? There's no objective measure. You have your record, but there's always and when we look to think about, okay, how can we equip citizens to overcome toxic polarization and actually take action to incentivize problem solving, we thought a ranking that borrowed from that vernacular would be really useful, but then had to set about figuring out how to do it. How can we rank our congressional representatives in a way that elevates to what extent they are behaving in a constructive problem-solving manner? So we went to our friends at the Polarization Research Lab, an amazing joint initiative between Dartmouth, Stanford, and the University of Pennsylvania, who collect an enormous trove of data, everything from polling to AI and machine learning based analysis of all elected officials, this is at the federal level, their public speech, from their floor speeches to their email newsletters to their social media to their rallies. And they collect data on funding. They collect an enormous trove of data. And we said, how can we set about creating a builder score? And a builder is something we define as somebody who is a flexible thinker, a constructive problem solver, and somebody who's striving to recognize the dignity of all people. So in working with our friends at PRL, Polarization Research Lab, we said, what data do you have that can help us map to those metrics? So we created a builder score, basically a subset of their data that calculates for all congressional representatives their propensity for substantive policy discussion, their willingness to engage in constructive debate across lines of difference, how much they engage in ad hominems or personal attacks. Of course, you get a negative score for that metric. And then the extent to which they are legislatively effective. Are they introducing, co-sponsoring, actually getting bills passed with bipartisan coalitions? Are they legislating to repeal laws, right? Many of our fellow citizens feel like less government is a good thing, so that also takes action. But those basically were the four metrics that create the composite builder score. We rank every congressional rep top to bottom and put out for the 4 weeks leading into the election. This was our launch sort of moment. This ranking that showed the top 5 Democrats and Republicans in Congress and the bottom 5, the dividers of the week. We did it as a weekly ranking. And crucially, the dividers of the week are not locked in, the penalty box forever. The whole point is that through ongoing, more constructive and solution-oriented behavior, you can go from being a divider to a builder, and you can go in the other direction. So there's some incentive to stay there. But in just reframing the conversation around what it means to be a builder. By the way, plenty of people disagreed, or remember, defensible but debatable. People in social media, even some of the great panelists we brought on to help contextualize the weekly rankings, disagreed with the actual metrics, with the score. But Paul, once we're having that discussion about what it means to be a builder and how it's a better way to, then we're winning. Then we're reframing the conversation around the incentives and the way we ought to be evaluating how our elected officials are doing their jobs, not their policy positions. That obviously is going to matter very deeply to people, not the what, but the how they engage in the conflict, in the debate, in the negotiation, and in the legislation that democracy requires of them. So that is, in a nutshell, was the way that we launched this new program of ours.
So, I remember I had a professor a long time ago that told me life's not an n-dimensional Euclidean space. And his point that he was making is you can't put a set of values out on a Euclidean on the X and Y axis, and then somehow or another chart out where n is perfect. Right. What you can do is you can figure out who it is that you're trying to appeal to, or figure out what it is that you find to be important. So as an example, if you were trying to do a progressive score, it might be okay to say, hey, I'm going to chart out here who votes the most progressive in Congress. Now, it wouldn't matter if you won. It would just matter that you voted progressive. If you said, I want to figure out who votes the most pro-MAGA, it wouldn't necessarily say who won. It would just be who voted the most times on the right side. That's very different than, to me, a builder, someone who's trying to help forge something forward. In fact, one of them tends to be more predisposed. Those two examples I gave you, they actually are more predisposed to how you destroy things, because effectively, as long as you see the other side as being evil, then you're going to get a higher score. All right. But if you see the other side as having merit or worthy to listen to, or at least to have a conversation with, to see if there are areas where you can find agreement, you're going to actually drop in the scoring process. But if your goal is to be aspirational about where a government needs to go, to figure out not what's wrong with this place, but instead, where do we need to go? A builder score becomes more important, because it seems to me you're almost not focused on ideology. You're focused on what are you doing to help build the vision going forward that is sustainable. And sustainable means the minute a new administration comes in, they're not going to try to disassemble what you've done. And there will be a new administration. It will happen. But if you've built something that had bipartisan support, it has a much higher chance for longevity.
100%. Yeah, the durability of the solutions is crucial. And what we're seeing now in at least some of the plans of the incoming administration, and this happened as the Biden administration came in, is right. If we're just going to have the forever kind of vacillation of executive orders, wipe out the last person's and put my own. Like, this is not a way, right? The idea was that we're persuading, we're negotiating, we're making some compromises while still holding on to our strongly held convictions and actually legislating in a process that is probably, slower than any of our modern like feed addicted attention spans are preferring. But that is the truth. It's meant to be sort of slow and deliberate by design. The difference, Paul, what you talked about between now the kinds of report cards that you're talking about as it relates to sort of more partisan stands or policy, those exist, right? And the NRA has and maybe still had or maybe still has a report card on how people have voted as it relates to gun restriction. They would release that all the time. And listen, we are allowed to have strongly held convictions that are ideological and that are partisan or that are a mix of people are complicated. This sits alongside our most passionately held convictions. This is just as you said. I want someone to go into Congress and work to legislate on my behalf in a way that's durable, not to antagonize, not to diminish, not to destroy, not to divide. And I think that the 87% of this country that's sick of the partisan politics and the bickering is likely to find the Builders Power Rankings a useful tool to help them understand, alongside their strongly held convictions, who's going to go be an effective leader and a good model of the builder's mindset and builder behaviors.
All right. So talk to me about your distribution model. So I know how you're collecting the data. I can see what you're doing with that data to make certain that it's actionable from a voter standpoint. How do you distribute that and ensure that it gets into the right hands?
It's a good call. I got to tell you, I'm still like kind of blown away by the n-dimensional Euclidean space reference. I was not, as a former physics student, I'm not expecting that. We live in a curved space, a non-Euclidean space. So maybe that'll hang out.
Yeah. Really? So a physics major, huh?
I doubt.
So
I doubt.
well, then it would be the second law of thermodynamics that would matter here, which is that there's an entropy if we don't put energy into things. If we can't find a way to collectively ensure that there's an energy put into this democracy, it will fall apart back into chaos.
Wow. I'm like starting to, I don't know if I'm going to top that. So I'm going to just do my best to sheepishly answer your good question about distribution. So a big part of our work at Builders, right, a big part of our theory of change is hinges on the idea of scale, right? We're in a world where many million, like the majority of our fellow citizens are spending, for better or worse, all or most of their time here. For anyone listening, I just held up my phone, and it probably is for worse in a lot of cases. And if we want to change culture, the social science tells us, depending on if you ask which academic you ask, but somewhere between 10 and 20% of a population finding traction with a new social idea can turn it into a social norm. You don't need 50%, you don't need more. So the idea of the builder's mindset becoming a social norm is the idea, the end game for us, and 10 to 20% of this country's population is enormous, let alone the world. So scale is really important. We need to reach people and bring them into the builder's mindset, which, by the way, our insights and data show that most people are already there anyway, even if that's not what they would call it, and continue to equip them with these kinds of inspiration tools, the network to actually change our culture and hold our elected officials accountable. So with that in mind, with scale in mind, we've spent the last 3 years since we've launched building up a social digital following that is creeping up towards 4 million now, a newsletter that's reaching a couple 100,000 people a week. And these are, this is the world that I come from, which is the sort of audience development, digital marketing, leveraging the tools of community management and connection that are digital to seed, and create communities around kind of like-minded ideas and values. So when we launch a new tool and a new program like Builders Power Rankings, the immediate thing we do is go to the amazing community that we've had the good fortune to aggregate over the last several years and give it directly to them first, right? They are co-owners, co-builders. They help us think through the work every day. So that's where we start. Now, I mentioned before our panelists as well. So in addition to the AI and the kind of quantitative machine learning sort of powered thing that Polarization Research Lab does so well, we all know that artificial intelligence is the co-pilot, if not the pilot, right? We still need some human intelligence layer to examine and to scrutinize the results of the AI and say, does this pass the smell test here? So each week we had 3 people each week, an ideological mix ranging from the podcaster and journalist Kara Swisher to Andrew Yang, obviously from Ford Party and the business person, to Karl Rove, who's formerly the Bush administration, to Gary Kasparov, the great sort of activist and chess champion, and tons of people of that stature getting together 3 at a time to spend time with us and analyze the results. Where did the metrics get it right? Where did it get it wrong? Where might we improve it going forward? And that also becomes a part of the overall distribution, in the sense that these incredible folks lending their names and their time to having and modeling the kinds of conversations we want to see happening out in the world. This allows us to sort of jumpstart the conversation and really get some additional virality. So these are the primary ways that we're going to market, through this audience that we've built, and then working with amazing aligned people who are invited to both participate in the conversation, scrutinize, and help improve the tool itself.
It would seem also that you could find a great deal of success from a distribution model by teaming up with some other group. I don't know if it's CNN or Fox or MSNBC or somebody's big podcast, but somebody that would just play out those results on a regular basis. In that way, I think it's a wonderful idea. So the results that you hope that you'll see, how do you measure your results of success? Do you measure that by how many people it's being distributed to? You said that you're getting to 4 million people. Or do you measure that by the result that you actually see in Congress?
Yeah. So for the launch phase, we're purely, this is just the product developer in me. We're looking for those signals of product market fit, right? Have we made something that people want? Do they find it useful? Are they finding it interesting? So that's a combination of quantitative and qualitative data. So at the end of the 4-week run up to the election, we are now sitting on a trove of data that includes, over 250,000 unique American citizens visited the tool. We got tons of great feedback in the qualitative sort of comment threads from the content that we put out in social media. So ultimately, the signal that people find it useful, that people find it engaging, those early signals are there. There are things that it doesn't do that people are interested in. Like, I would love to just be able to search my own state and see everybody. So we're like, okay, so we take a note of that. We work it into the product roadmap. And ultimately, the kind of impact that we want to be measuring in the world is that folks are using the Builders Power Ranking as one of the key information signals that are helping them make decisions when it comes to who our elected leaders are. And we're actually happy to see, by the way, speaking of these signals, that several representatives actually shared out their rankings. Typically, it was the people on the builders list, not the other folks, but that was really nice. Representative Ossoff and Chavez DeRemer, a few people were able to share out the list to their social media feeds, which was great.
All right. You care if we bring up maybe one of your feeds? Do you have a feed that you could show us, or that we could log on to show that would show past results on something?
Yeah, so if you go to buildersranking.com, you can see the power rankings. It'll have the previous 4 weeks that we ran it in the lead up to the election. And then, folks can go to buildersmovement.org and get a much broader sort of compendium that looks at the ambition of our work, several other initiatives that we run, one of which you and the lovely folks here at Optimistic American in Citizen Solutions have actually talked about before, which we appreciate very much. Yeah, so when you land at Builders Power Ranking, the first thing you see is that you can toggle across the 4 weeks leading up to, as you scroll down a little bit, leading up to the 4 weeks in which we ran the rankings. And we are looking initially at the lists of top 5 builders in both major parties. You can toggle in the bottom there, builders dividers. You can see the dividers list for those given weeks. Again, they're dividers of the week, so they can come off those lists. if your listeners and viewers have a chance to actually click through the different weeks, you'll see that some folks like Representative Ossoff and Representative Chavez-DeRemer actually showed up on the top of the builders list a few times. So they get whatever our version of the Lombardi Trophy or the Stanley Cup is, if we keep the sports metaphor going. And going further down, you can see that for each week, we've represented the panelists who offered commentary, which we recorded in sort of which we recorded a sort of short form video clip of our panelists giving commentary on that given week's clip.
This panel, this picture that we're looking at, just for the audience, these are all elected officials, or excuse me, they're all, I will call them political people, although a couple of them have been elected officials, that represent kind of a wide sphere. You see Karl Rove over on the far right. He ran Bush's campaign, probably one of the premier guys on the right. If Andrew Yang ran for president on the Democratic side, but he's running the Forward Party today. So is this your panel or just people that you were recognizing? Because I also noticed that you had Jeffries here as one of the dividers on one of the given weeks.
Yeah, so this is actually a good opportunity to give a little bit more sort of specifics on what the panelist discussion sort of looks like. So in this particular week, Karl Rove and Andrew Yang were two panelists alongside Kara Swisher who discussed this week's rankings. And one of the interesting things that came up this week is that Representative Hakeem Jeffries came up as a divider this week. And this surprised some of the panelists because Representative Jeffries has sort of a reputation, it typically as being a little more even-handed and sort of bipartisan operator. But in this week had made a fairly sweeping statement about Republicans and the Republican Party as part of a written statement that he made in reply to Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana. Representative Clay Higgins had made some comments about folks that were in this particular week that were widely condemned as bigoted and racist. Again, I encourage your listeners and viewers to go read and of course do the critical thinking for themselves. But the discussion that happened amongst our panelists was, well, is it okay for Representative Jeffries to respond in as impassioned and frankly probably as angry and as offended a way as he did relative to what Representative Higgins said in that given week? And there was some back and forth, but ultimately a lot of agreement amongst folks as varied in their viewpoints as Karl Rove and Kara Swisher, and agreement from Andrew Yang as well, that yes, there is a place for defending yourself, that being a builder doesn't mean necessarily being passive or not standing up for yourself, but that we do want to stop short of painting the entire other side, in quotes, with a broad brush, and that maybe Representative Jeffries had gone too far in that moment. So I encourage folks to watch the video.
Great discussion.
Yeah.
And I noticed Elizabeth Warren, who I would definitely put into a divider column generally, being one of your positive people. What was it that she had done that drew that?
Yeah, so this is actually crucial because one of the ways Builders Power Rankings is really powerful is that it can sometimes defy our historical sense of somebody's reputation or their behaviors, and that can be seen potentially as a positive or a negative. But the Power Rankings preferences recency, right? It's looking at the recent week or two and sort of the activity that each of these representatives has undertaken. It does have historical data, but it weights the recency in terms of their actions, their behaviors, their public speech. So Senator Warren, in this particular week, had recently been involved in a couple different bipartisan pieces of legislation and was very vocal about that. So had that week potentially defied some expectations of somebody who usually is quite pointed and quite partisan in the way that she speaks and in the way that she speaks about the other side. So do we forget, somebody's entire reputation, pardon me, because of some good behavior? No, probably not. But do we want to offer people a pathway to demonstrate better behavior and continue to encourage that? Absolutely, we do. So it's important for us to make that distinction here. This is a part of its power, and what I think is a feature, not a bug, is that in a given week it may defy our expectations. But some people may say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be too quick to praise people who have a history of behavior that's divisive. And I think that's all part of the back and forth the debatability of power rankings that we think, frankly,
Do
there's
you see
benefits.
your site long term having the ability to sort it by person so you can see which week they might have been in either category?
You're asking me the tough roadmap questions. We are in
Uh-huh.
the heat, in the throes of making those determinations right now. So that is on the list of potential features we could add. But I'm going to have to be
What
coy
other
and
features are you talking about?
other features. So yeah, people being able to
Hmm.
sort by individual, people being able to sort by their own state. The idea of potentially launching, evaluations of other. Right, this is all federal legislatures and legislators. So do we, think about at the state level or other sorts of sort of convenings, legislative sessions. So there's a lot that's on the kind of corkboard right now. So I'll have to be a little coy and tell you and the listeners, keep an eye peeled on buildersmovement.org, and we're going to be better yet, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you guys posted.
All right. So talk to me about, I believe you've consulted with or helped a number of different business entrepreneurs. Is that correct?
So a part of our network at Builders is a group we call our movement partners, and these are kind of titans of industry across sectors, ideologies. I mean, these are folks really accomplished and publicly visible in business, media, entertainment, journalism, national defense, faith, national service. So this is more of a partnership relationship where we work with these folks to co-create tools and to help empower them to bring those tools and the builder's mindset into their spheres of influence. So I would say less consultative and more sort of true partnership model.
Yeah. What I love about this concept is the concept of what business is supposed to do is to figure out the big problems that exist in society, find a way to fix them. Now, different people are doing that in all different types of ways. I'm a fan of Elon Musk, right? I love the fact that he created SpaceX. I love the fact that he created Tesla. I love the fact that he created PayPal. To me, he gets kind of some wacky. He's made some wacky political comments, if you ask me. But so what? I don't like him because of his politics. I like him because of his business acumen. I think he's amazing in that
Yeah.
way. Now, in saying that, it doesn't matter if it's him or Steve Jobs or Jamie Dimon or whoever it is. There are big problems in society that people have to go out and figure out how to solve. And business ends up being the one that solves most of those problems. This creates a connection between politics and business. You're using entrepreneurial skills to try to figure out how to fix one of the problems in politics. And what I love that you've picked out is generally what I find entrepreneurs make a mistake of is they try to fix too big of a problem. They try to tackle something that's so much bigger than them that they can't get to. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a moonshot and that you shouldn't have kind of a goal that you're headed towards. But in general, the place to start is with whatever is right in front of you and make it simple. This concept is a simple concept, but you can still put a lot of work and effort into raising capital, into building the website, into distributing what it is that you're doing, figuring out what new features should be added, trying to figure out is your real goal to affect legislation, or is your real goal to help out people who are casting their votes so they can understand who is or isn't in that divider list? Those are all things that an entrepreneur would have to fix in any area that they decided to focus on. You just decided to focus on an area that seems to be broken today, which is our political structure.
Yeah, I I think that's exactly right. I mean, we are entrepreneurial by design. I think that the language, and frankly, feel free to tease me about it when I slip into it. But even some of the jargon that the language that we use around product development, product market fit, radically understanding the needs of an audience while still knowing that audiences don't often always know what they need, especially not if the product is going to be innovative. These are things that guide our work every day. I mean, we're, our 4 C's that we talk about, right? Curiosity, compassion, courage, and creativity. We typically use those 4 C's as the emblematic pillars of the builder's mindset and the builder's values. That if we're practicing those things and striving to practice them every day, we're going to meet that definition of a builder. But those 4 C's also apply to every aspect of business and entrepreneurship. You must be curious about and fall in love with a problem and not any particular solution. You must be compassionate for the audience you're trying to super serve. You must be courageous about going to market and making mistakes. And of course, you have to be creative about the way that you look to solve that problem and market the solution to that problem. So in my presence here and the team that we've built, I've tried to, which God knows, like my skill set does not cover every single one of those things, but I've been fortunate to build up a killer team here who's thinking about this stuff all the time and really shooting for that scale. We're not trying to be the biggest, NGO bridging movement. We're trying to compete for people's attention with TikTok and Netflix, and that's how we have to think about the way that we're going to make change.
Awesome. And talk, if you would, talk to me about how you raise your revenue. Is any of it advertising, or is it all contributions today?
Yeah, right now, solely contributions. We Builders now is a part of our own, I don't know how interesting this stuff is, but our own 501. We were incubated by the Lubetzky Family Foundation, by our incredible founder and funder, Daniel Lubetzky, who's best known as the founder of Kind Snacks and Kind Bars, and is also on Shark Tank now, and has done an incredible body of work, even predating his.
Amazing entrepreneur.
Yeah, but an amazing social entrepreneur now for 3 decades, even predating a lot of that success. But we've now spun out into our own 501c3, and we'll be getting into the fundraising game. But yeah, that's primarily been it. Huge revenue opportunities, I think, especially because we produce so much content. But this has primarily been it thus far.
All right. So if somebody wanted to take part in your organization, what are the levels that they could take part in? Obviously, being on the website, how can they contribute money? How can they participate personally? What are the areas that somebody watching our show could participate if they would like?
Yeah. So I'd say there's 3 things. The first thing is the sort of is getting equipped. We love that word. We talk about our mission is equipping citizens to overcome toxic polarization and solve our toughest problems together. So the easiest way to get equipped is to plug into our steady feed of inspiration and practical tips. And that means go follow us on social media, go to Builders Movement. We're at Starts With Us, and rebranding into Builders. So you can find us at Starts With Us. Go find us on buildersmovement.org and sign up for the newsletter. And ultimately, in those 2 initial feeds, you'll be getting the best of the best from us week in, week out. And we do our best not just to serve up our own material, but the great work that comes out of the rest of the sort of depolarization field as well. So that's thing 1. Get equipped, right? Plug into that feed. Thing 2, step 2 is to use your voice, right? When we start to self-identify as builders, that really helps to grow the movement. So if you are a builder and what I'm talking about here aligns with, the way that you want to approach conflict in your life and the way that you want to see our elected leaders approach conflict, put it in your social media bio that you're a part of the Builders Movement. Put it in your LinkedIn, bio. Put it, go get a tattoo and, send me a picture of it. Maybe we'll pay for it. I'm kidding. Maybe. I think that there are just ways, though, to use your voice, like actually send the things that we create to other people in your life, and do yourself a favor and send it to people you disagree with about things as much as you send to the people you agree with about things. Let's make this a big tent movement. So get equipped, use your voice, and self-identify. And thing 3 is if you have the capacity and you're ready to step up and solve, be a leader, right? We have some tools that are available on our website. You can always email us. Start to convene people regularly in your community. That can be as a part of things you're already doing. It can be in your church. It can be your parent group at school. It can be your student group if you're a student. Work with the groups that you already convene with, but start bringing these ideas into those regular meetings in terms of the way you process news, the way you process the election, the way you process all this culture war stuff. But that's the kind of 3-step in elevating kind of order. Get equipped by following and subscribing, use your voice by self-identifying and sharing this work, and then be a movement leader if you have the time, the capacity, the energy, and you feel like you're going to be a captain in the Builders Brigade. We'd love to have you.
Well, we will do that as part of the Optimistic American. Yeah. Hey, we appreciate you coming on. Any last comments?
I'm just grateful, Paul, for the work y'all do. I was, we are, as we try to spread the word about what we're doing, finding like-minded folks who I think are looking at achieving the same endpoint and thinking about it in different and complementary ways is really useful. And one of the things on your website that I love, speaking of tattoos, maybe I'll get this one, is that we are urgent optimists, right? That we have a sense of impatience, that being optimistic does not absolve us of taking action. We must take action. Action absorbs anxiety. Action is the pathway. So everyone get off the couch, I know it's hard. It's hard for me, metaphorically, physically, and like, let's do our civic duty to hold our electeds accountable to behaviors that are going to serve all Americans, and let's find community and build on the common ground that we have for the common good.
That's right. And it may not look exactly like we wanted it to if we're builders, but we can build something spectacular if we're willing to work with others and listen to others, find common ground with others. And you are definitely working on that. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, and we appreciate the Builders Group.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining the Optimistic American Show. Now help us grow by subscribing to our channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like and a comment. There is so much more that we have planned. We can't wait for you to embark upon this journey with us.